Welcome to Empower, a series of unheard leadership mantras packed in a webinar for you. So, first of all, today is a World Environment Day. So, let me wish you all a happy World Environment Day. And year 2020 has, of course, a year that proven to be a year which has given us many lessons not to take environment for granted. So a special tribute to the environment. We have a special session today, which is what in Nathan's word he calls it, no PPT, no Gyan session, which is very close to the nature. So that's going to be the session for all of you. I'm sure, like me, all of you are on the edge of your seat to listen to stories. So be there because I'm just going to do some quick hygiene announcements. So first of all, for those who don't know me, I mean, there won't be a soul today who doesn't know Nathan. But yes, for those who don't know me, my name is Meg Risala. I'm also a Jabra fan of Nathan's stories. And I'm the Chief Experience Officer for Enable, which is a part of the Strategy Stand family, a global HR and advisory firm. Some quick hygiene announcements for better audio and video experience. We have put everyone on mute. That doesn't mean we don't want a participation. Nathan hates that. So obviously there's going to be some opportunity of interaction, but how we're going to do that? You're going to send us a message. So there is a host hiding behind the logo of Strategy Stand, my partner in crime, Mr. Atul Sharma, whom you can, Atul, can you please wave? Yeah, so please shoot your questions. He's going to help me get the questions from the audience so that I can push them to Nathan. Also, kindly turn off your videos so that, we get a better quality. At the end of the webinar, we're going to request all of you to turn on the videos so that we can capture this wonderful memory. And now, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming. Well, hold on. I mean, you know so much about Nathan. I can't be just doing his introduction about what he does. So if you can allow me, I'm going to do it. It's a empower. It's a unheard mantras. So let me do a introduction in a very different way for our own Bahubali of HR. So for a moment, you imagine that, there is a background of Sahore Bahubali music going on. And here I go, and I welcome Nathan. Ba Adab, Ba Mulaiza, Hoshiyar, Storyteller ke Badshah, Office Truth Fame, HR के सरताज, सोशल मीडिया के शहनशाह, HR की रेपुटेशन के रखवाले, श्री श्री SV Nathan पधार रहे हैं. So that's Nathan for you. So Nathan, if you could wave at all of us, please. Thank you so much, Nathan. I can't tell you how excited I am to have you on Empower. It's a privilege and pleasure both. I must get straight into the session because people are eager to listen to your stories. But just to give you the context, once upon a time in 1993, when I was doing my engineering in REC Nagpur, I was hammered by my professor that Meg, aap kahani bahut batate ho. And I think that year I developed that stigma as I was getting ready to step into the corporate world, that kahanis are not meant for the corporate world. And it took me a little time to get rid of that stigma. But we are keen to know from you, Nathan, all about stories. So tell us, how did stories happen to you and why stories are important for you? So Nathan, all yours, please.
Hey, thank you, Meg. First of all, I see a lot of people today, many of whom are people that I know. So thank you so much for joining. In some way, you also make me a tad nervous because if I were amongst people that I didn't know, it would have been so much more easier. So to all my friends, and I'm not going to name because I'm able to see many of them, a big wave out to all of you. And for all people who have joined because they want to listen to some stories in the afternoon, again, a big wave out to all of you. Meg, it's very, very nice of you. I think you've been very generous in your words. I didn't know that you are from Nagpur because I'm a Nagpuri. And I got admissions into Vishweshwara Regional Engineering College, but I didn't go there. And again, sometimes what happens is you start your life one way. So I'm gonna start off with a story. This is one which is long ago, long ago. There was an old woman, and this old woman had all but one leg. And she used to be living in a house which had just one room, and that was their living room, their kitchen, their everything. And even for your morning ablutions, you had to use some common toilets and so on. And she had a family around her. And every evening, she would get onto her living room. And by the way, the room that they stayed had a pardha, because that was a privacy curtain, which was made of jute bags, which got ripped out and stitched. So you can imagine the kind of person that she was. Her living room was really the platform just outside her house. But she was a zestful woman. She used to sit down in the evening and share a lot of stories. And what was great about her stories was they were always very enlivening, and you just really wanted to listen to her. And always she had a lot of people around her, and her grandchildren were about her. I got to know about this, so I joined the gang. I loved it because her stories were so fantastic, and she asked only one thing of us: whatever that you do, make sure that you listen to what I say. So that's all that she had. And so I used to listen to her wonderful stories. One day it so happened that one of the grandchildren, by the way, when she's saying all these stories, she used to have a bowl of rice, a curd rice, which used to go around her grandchildren's hands. And that was dinner for them. They used to all but have 2 meals a day. And one day, what happened, one of their grandchildren was there and that got distracted. When the child got distracted, the child turned around, and the grandmother felt very offended and gave the child a slap. So the child balked. The grandmother said, "What happened? I'm telling you a story, you're not listening to me." And the child says, "Grandma, I'm sorry, I saw a car." "What about the car?" Said, "Can I ever sit in a car?" So the grandmother says, "Of course, child, you can sit in a car. If you have to sit in a car, sit in the front seat and drive the car must be yours. And if you're sitting behind, the car must be yours. The driver must be somebody that you're paying." And this is to a child who is not known anything. The child has not even stepped on a bus, far less a car, and asked very innocently, "Grandma, do you really think I can?" And all this in the lingua franca of that particular region. And the grandmother says, "Yes, you can, my child. All you have to do is work hard, have a dream, and just work towards it. That's all that I say, work hard." I remember that story. I remember that story almost as if it happened yesterday, because it made a deep impact on me. Every time I sit in a car, I remember the story of that grandmother, the one-legged grandmother. Because the grandmother who told that story to me was my grandmother. And obviously the person who's speaking to you is yours truly. The person who got distracted was yours truly. I can never forget her. It made a deep impact. sometimes we know not what really propels us, what moves us. That was the one that really moved me deeply. So, for a child who didn't know any language other than Tamil, studied in a corporation school, and was always encouraged to listen to the public announcements of what's happening on a radio of news, which was in English, which was at that time very all gibberish to me because I never understood anything. Forced by a grandfather who used to say, go to the public library and read a newspaper, and you have to climb on stools just to even know and cobble words together to understand what that sentence meant. It's been a long journey. I'm always in debt to that single story, and so therefore, in all humility, I would like to salute my grandmother because her stories made an impact. So that's what is about the little that I am into stories.
And Nathan, I always, whenever I heard your stories, it always sounds like your own story. You always have played some characters in that. But tell us, I mean, when we don't have a story for an occasion, can we make one? Can we borrow one? I mean, how does one handle this situation?
So there's nothing called, you don't really have to make up a story. You really, it will happen to you. And you may not know anything about that story. And sometimes what happens around you can become part of your story. Something that you see, something that you observe can become part of your story. I mean, the loving way in which a gardener starts to put in a small sapling, the way that he waters or she waters that, and you see something growing out of that, that pretty much is a dream that was sown and tended and cared for. So it's a very simple thing. Yesterday I was reading about how cork is made. Didn't know that 98% of the cork that's made in the world is from Portugal. It takes 25 years for a cork tree to get into a place where somebody would then strip it of its bark. And the bark is what you get of that cork that you see in the bottles. The best corks in the world are made from there. So obviously, to me, they all represent that there is a passage of time. There's somebody who is scared. So development takes time. So there is a story in anything that is around you. It's just a matter of how you look at it and making meanings. And sometimes you don't even know. Sometimes you don't even know that these are the powerful stories that are coming your way.
Wonderful. Nathan, as you know, when we launched our session, there was an opportunity for people to ask questions. And, I mean, there are more than 100 questions that we have received. I mean, I wish maybe we'll have to publish a book once we get the answers. But one of the most popular questions that we have noticed is people love your office truths on LinkedIn. And many of them, including me, want to know, when do you get these thoughts? I mean, is it the first cup of ginger tea in the morning, or is it the last strong coffee the previous evening? How do you get these thoughts, which sound so authentic and original and your own?
So, first of all, it's a great question. It can happen anytime during the day, by the way. So, one of the nicest things that we have is this.
Okay.
Because as soon as you get some thought in your head, and this is all born out of your experience during the day, you write them down. And they may be good, they may be things that you see around you. You just note them down. And in the morning, you start to look at it and see whether this is evocative. Because you read that again and you say, okay, does it make sense? And if it does, I will just put it out. And for me, it's very, very important to stay connected. And I'll give you a reason why, Meg. So maybe it happened about almost like 2 years ago. 2 years ago, almost tended to say long, long ago, So 2 years ago, I put out something out in the open which said these two lines. There will be a time in your life when the yellow river will turn clear and the wheels of fortune will turn in your favor.
Wow.
Hashtag office truth. And I also put another one that says life truth. There will be a time in your life when the yellow river will turn clear and the wheels of fortune will turn in your favor. Then I got a number of things, but there was a private message to me from a girl. And this woman says, "Thank you so much, Nathan. I had almost given up on life. Thank you so much. Don't stop." So that's the day when I just got back and I said, man, this is something which is exceedingly important, because what if this woman, and I don't want to get to the rest of it. So to me, these are the moments. Sometimes you read it and you say, okay, hopefully somebody changes something. Maybe at a subliminal level, something says, as it did for me. There is always a story in everybody's life. And it's a matter of what we look at. All of us go through this. Some people find time to write them down, and that's what I do.
Fantastic.
But thank you. That's a great question.
Absolutely. And I think, a lot of people would give me a thumbs up because that was the question in their mind too. No, Nathan, I heard you say that, we get these thoughts across the day. And most of us who are in this virtual room today, we spend our daytime in office hours. Is it that, stories are not meant for the corporate? Are stories not meant for the formal environment? Are stories not meant for business? Do they take away from the reality?
So all stories are things that can, whether it's to do with your business or whether it's to do with anything that you do, are things that you can pull into even a business context, you can put into a life context, you can pull it into any context. And I'll give you an example. Many years ago, I remember there was a person who was my boss, and there was a gentleman who asked me for something. I didn't have it. I was asking him all kinds of questions, and he got infuriated. He went and complained to my general manager, who called me, and he absolutely flayed me. And then at the end of it, he called me back and he gave me a book. And this book was a simple book that says, The Art of Asking Questions. The Art of Asking Questions. So I read through all of that. And then I was able to recount that sometime in my life, and let me tell you that story if you're okay. So it so happened that I wanted to be an athlete. Why did I want to be an athlete? Because my dad was an athlete, and he had run with a gentleman called Emil Zettelpack, who was an Olympian, and I felt I should be running. So I was very keen on running. So my mother said, why didn't you go to the ground and you try your luck? And there'll always be somebody out there. So I went, there was a coach. In those days, you didn't have any of these fancy places where you can run. And so this was just a normal playground, and there was a track. And there was an old man who was a self-appointed coach. I went up to him and I said, Coach, can I run the 100 meters? Am I good in the 100 meters? So he says, okay, now run 100 meters and let me see whether you're good at it. So I ran the 100 meters. At the end of 100 meters, he told me, son, you're not born to run. You're terrible. I don't think you can run 100 meters for nuts. And I collapsed. I went home. I was crying. I was not even crying. I was just moaning. And my mother looked at me and says, what happened? So I said, Mama, this is what happened. I went to the coach. So what exactly did you ask him? I said, I asked him whether I could run the 100 meters, whether I was good in 100 meters. So he said, son, you asked him the wrong question. Now go back to him and ask him what you're really good at. And so the next day I went in and I had my shorts, I had a singlet, went up to the coach, he looked at me and he says, "Oh, फिर से आ गया?" And then I told him, "Coach, humor me, tell me what I am good at." So the coach said, "Okay, you see this? You run around and this 400-meter track, and I'll let you know whether you're good at something." So I started to run. 400 became 800, 12, 1600, 2000. I kept running and running. And after many rounds, he asked me to stop. He called me and he told me, "You will make a very good middle and long distance runner." And he patted me on the back. And then something else happened in life. And I became the college captain. I still run. Of course, I'm not able to run now because of some ailments. But if I move that aside, I will always remember what my mother persuaded me to do, which is to go and ask the right questions. So that can happen in a business context as well. Are we asking the right questions? And by the way, I also discovered something about myself. You need to play to people's strengths. Many times in our corporate world, everybody tells you you're not good, you are not. And "you are not" seems to be the opening line instead of saying "you are." The moment you start with "you are," and then a lot of things flow.
Fantastic.
So,
Nathan, we already heard two stories from your own, book of life. I mean, the first one was your own grandmother. The second one, you also told us about those two powerful lines that you wrote, and people started writing to you. That those two lines can actually change somebody's life. If there was a better time to hear a story or listen to a story, I think today is the time. I mean, in the prevailing situation, what story comes to your mind, Nathan, that which can help us move mountains? Something which is very relevant for the today's context. Tell us something which can help us move mountains.
so I don't know whether I'll be able to relate with exactly the kind of situation you're looking at, but I'll go back in time and share with you something that is very enlivening. Maybe I'll tell you a couple. The one that I always remember is I think this was the time when it was, I think it was 1996, 1997. So about 24, 25 years ago. I was working in a holiday resort organization, and I had gone to Kodaikanal, Kodi as it's called. And at night at 12, somebody was drunk. They put their car in the river, and then a gym instructor ran out and he called for guys, and he managed to extricate that. And he told this man, "You can go to bed and don't worry about it." Whole night he worked on it, took it to the garage, got everything cleaned. At 8 in the morning, went up and said, "Here is your car, keys, that's it." That evening, since I was the general manager of the resort, for that particular company, I felt I should do something, and I gave him an award. I said, "Hey, thank you very much." So he looked at me, he says, he's a gym instructor, by the way. He looks at me and he says, "Sir, this is not enough." And I thought it was to do with the rupees and cents, because I had given him a handsome award of 2,000 rupees in those days. It was something that will go a long way. He said, "No, I really want to grow in my life and my career." And so one thing led to another, and he said, "I want to latch on." Something happened. He came in, and I said, "Okay, why don't you come in and be part of my team?" Because the whole thing was about an attitude. And long story short, he didn't stay with me for very long. He was with me for about 4 to 5 years, learned the ropes, so to speak. Today, if you meet up with Venkatesh, Venkatesh is the CHRO of the K Raheja group, which is Shoppers Stop. And he's an amazing gentleman. By the way, the recent picture of him is no different from what it was 20 years ago. He's still that same gym instructor, but in that I could find out the lowest of lows, because he was really low. He was at a point in time when he says, I don't want to do this because it's not going to get me far. And these were not the times, which are the great times. 1996 was a time, was almost like an economic downturn around 96, 97. They were dark days. And in those dark days, he said, I need to do something with my life. And so one thing led to another. I just think, if I can think of anybody who has an attitude and says, I want to do something, and in the spirit of service, when he comes in and does something, he goes places. So I will never forget Venkatesh, Venki, as we call him. He's the CHRO. By the way, he's in Mumbai. His Hindi is not as good as yours and mine, Meg, but he's a big dude.
Wow. No, I think, salute to this gym trainer and, to the gentleman who spotted this talent, right time, right place. Amazing. Nathan, interestingly, when you are narrating this story, I've heard you say once to cut the long story short. And I don't know, this particular line is in the corporate world also used like a stapler to cut the long story short. So what's your perspective? I mean, is it that the long stories are not good? A quick take from you would help us.
Oh, no, it's not that. For example, I did not tell you that when I left the organization and went to another organization, this guy said, I want to work with you. And I wanted the story to be focused on Venki. That's why I shortened it.
Okay. So there we go.
Cut the long story short.
Perfect. Nathan, also, Atul has just pinged me with a very interesting question. Has come from a gentleman called Azir, and he's saying that is there a story in your professional life that you've shared but it backfired? Would love to know if there has been any instance like that.
So there are not one, there are plenty. There are plenty of stories that backfire. See, really what happens is you need to really read the audience. You need to understand what is happening around. And if you're going in front of your executive or your board, they don't want to listen to stories. Mm-hmm. But what they want to listen to, and if I started a story, I say, okay, this was the journey, this is where we started, this is the story of a boy who joined us, this is what has happened, and weave a story which is a real story. People don't have time for that. People in the corporate world, what they look for is, they're looking at patterns. Does the pattern tell a story? You walk up to any of the stockbrokers, they will tell you hundreds of stories. They will tell you, but within the story, there's always a pattern. So people want to listen to patterns. People want to understand, what is the data, from data to information, from information to insights, insights to action. That is the continuum. A story can set a context. So whenever that we talk about stories, and if you get in a long-winded one, you'll be blown off. I've had quite a few. I completely misread my audience. The first executive meeting that I had, I shared it. I started off with a story. And I started off with the story of one of the people that I had in the organization. And I wanted to weave it into a policy. Because what I wanted to say is, we need a policy for this. And then I said, okay, this is how it starts, and wanting to say, okay, we should do something about it. Whole thing backfired.
Wonderful. Thanks, Nathan.
They said,
it does help.
Let's cut to the chase.
Excellent. So Nathan, please tell us, if one wants to be a storyteller, at whatever age he or she decides, it is important for us to know, can this be acquired? Can storytelling as a skill can be acquired, or you need to be a born storyteller?
So first of all, you don't need to be a born storyteller. You don't need to be a born storyteller. I think the easy way to look at it is, if you were to tell a story to yourself, how would you want that? So you need to have a story where there is a beginning, which is like a dramatic beginning. And then there are some things which happen along, and there is an ending. And that ending is something that is meaningful. And is this something that you're able to relate with? You don't have to go far, Meg. We all go to the airports, the railway stations, the bus stands. We look at books. You flip through books. If you want to buy a book, what is the book that you will buy? You'll buy the book that is appealing, right? The first few pages is the one that, okay, take it. This is the one that I want to buy. That's what, and it's an acquired art. And the easiest way to do that is to try telling a story to your child. And by the way, I used to tell stories to my children. Mm-hmm. And perhaps over a period of time, I think that has been the big difference, because that made a difference not only to them, but it made a difference to me. Because I would also do one more thing. The same, I have, my mother passed away a couple of years ago. I used to go to her and I would, while she was conversant in English, she was good at writing English. She was not good at listening to English and trying to understand a whole lot of stuff. So I used to say, Amma, I'm going to read you out something. I'm going to say something to you. Let me know whether all of this makes sense. And she would then say, Ma, hey, listen, this was okay. You went down like this. She knows the word modulation and all. That's how. So you have to recount the stories to somebody, and then it would come back as feedback. And they would say, yes, this is a story I can relate with.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thanks for this wonderful insight. Nathan, we heard data-based decisions. Can we expect one more term to get popular in the times to come? Story-based decisions? Is it possible?
Absolutely possible. Absolutely possible. Absolutely possible. I mean, so I am trying to get people wound around their head that you don't have to go, for example, in our own function, you don't have to go to an XLRI or TIS or the big universities to be a successful human resources professional. And by the way, this is with all the caveats to all the Excelers who may be on this call. And I know that there could be a few. I'm an Exceler, I know this. All it requires is a couple of things. One is very hard work. And two, a willingness to say, I want to do something, I want to succeed, because these are the people who are hungry. Meg, if you'll permit me, years ago, and this was in Hyderabad, I wanted a stenographer. Now, steno as a skill is evanescent today, does not exist, or maybe existing in pockets. I wanted somebody who could do the Pitman steno writing. I wanted the person to take notes, then type it out, bring it to me. By the way, this was not too long ago, 15 years ago. They scoured Hyderabad, they couldn't find anybody. And then they got some 3 shortlists. 2 people were rejected. Finally, they got 1 man. And they got this, they told me, Nathan, you won't like this guy. I said, why? Because he's a short chap. I said, what do you think? I'm an Amitabh Bachchan or what? So he said, bring him on. So a gentleman came into my room and we had a conversation. And the more I spoke to him, and by the way, he already had about some 23 years of work experience. Very proficient, very nice. I liked him. He was short, but how do you remove these kinds of biases? The more I spoke to him, the more I felt that he seemed to have much more than what is on that venue. Then I asked him a question. I said, what did you do in your undergrad? He said, BSc Physics. Percentage, 86. So I said, you had 86% in your physics and you became a stenographer? So he said, well, sir, life, because my father was unwell, I had to take up a job. I said, okay. Then said, I've been a stenographer till then. So I like this gentleman. So I told him, look, I will hire you, but I will fire you in 18 months. Are you okay with that? So he said, he got a little worried. He said, what do you mean fired? I said, I'll fire you from this position. I said, I never said I'll fire you from my company. So he said, okay. And in 18 months, I moved him to operations. And I just found that he was extremely hardworking. I moved him to ops. And after almost 10 years, he came up to me and he says, sir, I would like to leave Deloitte and I want to join this so-and-so company. And he opened the letter. It says, happy to inform you that you are now the general manager, human resources. And it was a leading company in Hyderabad. And this was for a stenographer. By the way, he moved on from that company. He's currently the director of operations of a very large multinational handling over 25,000 people, again in the city of Hyderabad. Nagaraj, I'm very, very happy to announce that as a director of human resources at Virtusa, you do us proud. So it's all in that. How do we, you don't really have to get this. So the Venkateshas of the world, and I can talk about Mahidhar Reddy in my life, Mahi Reddy, I call him Mahi. Mahi to me epitomizes what this is about.
Wow.
Mahi, by the way, he was from a B school and he was a payroll clerk in one of the companies. I just happened to work a little late. I found in a corner there was a light on and I went up and I found somebody was whistling. And he says, what are you doing? I said, look, I'm getting my pay slips done. And this is in triplicate, not duplicate. You know, you had those carbon copies and all that. And dot matrix printer. And I said, you're so happy about it? He said, sir, aap jante nahi ho. One extra zero, somebody is very happy. And one less zero, somebody is very unhappy. And he was whistling. And so I said, hey, listen, I need to know learn a little bit more about you. And please come to my office. Came to the office and something happened. And I asked about where did you study? He said, I went to YGP, VGP School of Management. And I said, okay, so I've never heard about this. He said, sir, 1 year after which they closed down that school. And I was of the last batch, first and last batch. They closed down that school. And then there was a call from my regional manager of Bombay, or rather the Western region. And he said, hey, Nathan, I don't have an HR manager and I need somebody on the spot now. And this job has been pending for a long time. Then I looked at Mahi and I said, I kept the phone down. I said, Mahi, do you think you can go to Bombay? And I would like you to take over as a HR head of Bombay for the Bombay region. So he says, sir, you don't understand. I'm only a senior analyst. And that is the job of a manager. So I said, not even a manager, regional manager. I said, don't worry, man. You are now appointed to Jana. Then I asked him, do you know Hindi? So he said, Tora, Tora. And long story short, 4 days ago, I got a call. Correction, about 2 years ago, I got a call. And this was a guy who says, sir, I'm tired of going to Miami. I said, what happens in Miami? He said, they call the top 1% of the people worldwide whose contribution has been the best.
Wow.
And on that list was Mahidhar Reddy. And Mahi was on that list, not for 1 year, for 3 years. For 3 years, Mahi went to Miami. And Mahi, by the way, became a director of Hewlett Packard. He moved on and so on. I've no idea where Mahi is today, but wherever he is, he would do an outstanding job. It depends, therefore, on an attitude. It does not depend on the school. the more I think about it, the more I believe we need to have the right attitude, and we need to have those skills that people develop along the way. So anyway, you asked me a question and I got completely digressed. I'm sorry.
No, no, hats off. I mean, to Venki, to Nagraj, to Mahi. And there is an interesting question. I mean, there are lots of them flooding into my, chat right now. So I missed the name of the person who's asked this question, but a wonderful question which relates to this, because the stories that are coming our way right now from you, you are involved in these stories. And what this person wants to know from you is, how can we take out the I from the story to make it sound modest at times?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So I can tell you a story of one day. This is something that happened in front of me. There was a person who was running a race. And this was on the 26th of Jan. That's when you run the mini marathon. And it happened that I was standing there. I couldn't run that day. All I had to do was watch. And this was a race between two people. And both these guys were running like mad. And everybody knew that one guy who's been winning for 14 years was going to win again. On the way back, and by the way, this was not happening in the nice ways that it happens here, which is very regulated. It happened where there was a gentleman, almost towards the end of the race, there was a gentleman you could make out. You had the last 4 kilometers, and there was a gentleman who had been following them on a scooter at 5 in the morning, braving the winters, and I'm talking about Bihar.
Right.
And he was on a scooter somewhere towards a 4 kilometer mark where the guy was second. He was getting egged on. Daljit kept on egging him and saying, hey, and of course he used a lot of very colorful words, and he kept him on. And at the end of the race, the person who was second came first.
Wow.
This particular race is kind of indelible in my head. I will never forget Daljit, because Daljit, of course, went on to be a very senior leader in Fortis. What stayed with me about Daljit was he showed up. We showed up more as people, as spectators, but this gentleman had a skin in the game. He didn't know the other chap, but he just wanted to go and support somebody who was the underdog. So can we be somebody who can support an underdog? It happened to me a little early in my career. So watch some of the things that are around me that we can pick from these stories. So pretty much that's where
wonderful. So, while you've partially answered this question, but this question is coming up again and again in my chat through Atul. So I would be sort of, keen to know from you. So it's storytelling. Would you classify it like an art, or it is a science, or it is a mix of two?
Storytelling is not a science. It's actually more of it. I don't know whether you'll even classify it as an art.
Mm-hmm.
Storytelling is just plain storytelling, boss. I mean, I'm not somebody who can tell you whether this is an art or a science. I know it's not a science. By the way, I must tell you that I'm a student of science.
Correct.
I'm a student of science. I would think it more lies in the corner of art, but storytelling is very powerful. I can tell you this: a story is 22 times more powerful than a presentation deck.
Mm-hmm.
People will listen to you if you have a story. And many times I would even go into conversation saying, I don't want to put up these. I would rather sit down and share something with you. Today, people who can delve into policies. I don't have to go too far. Just this day, there was something that happened in the nature of a transaction. Somebody needed help. And when that happened, so anyway, that transaction got over. What translated in my mind was, here is somebody who needs help. Is there a way that we can get a policy through this? And the best way to do that is describe the situation of what happens to a person. sometimes even incidents into the future become stories. So I just want to have one caveat there that all through whatever that I've shared are things which are in my life, which is not to arrogate myself to say, hey, this is what I need all of us to carry is what the other person has done. Because it is about these guys.
Right.
And I'm sure that there will be hundreds of Mahi Reddys, there will be hundreds of Nagaraj, there will be hundreds of Etal, Venkis, and so on. There will be hundreds of these people around. I would know of an Archana, I would know of our Meena, and I can talk about many of these people. It will just take a long time. But these are the heroes and heroines in the world of human resources and beyond. They are people who have become leaders in their own right because all that has happened to them was get them to realize their potential. Partly, that is what we can learn from these stories. Many of us need help. Every day when we go to bed, it's not like it's been a great day for all of us. We all latch on to the times when something happened and happened right for us. And then we latch on to it and then we come back and say, okay, that made a difference to me. What can make a difference to me here on? That is the difference.
Wow. One thread which is common across your stories, and you just nailed it about a while ago when we heard you say that it is not about me, it is about them. It is about those characters in the stories which are really making them big. So, take a bow, Nathan. This is amazing. So Nishana has a question for you. And she's asking, really go south. I mean, you are an inspiration to a whole lot of people in the country. When things go south, where do we get the inspiration from?
Okay, different people get these in different ways. I can only tell you where I get mine.
Yes.
I right in the here and now, can I do a small exercise?
Oh, please.
Okay. What I want you to do is just in the here and now, think of a time in your life when there was a difficult task, almost like an impossible task. You came out a winner and everybody around you applauded you. Your bosses felt you could not do that job. Your peers did not believe in you. Your subordinates did not believe in you. It was a very difficult task. You came out a winner. It was almost like you walked through walls. And at the end of it, everybody applauded you. As I'm speaking to you, you would have at least a couple of those stories in your mind. So if you did that then, you can do it today. The inspiration is only within you. It's not, I mean, you don't have to write and read somebody else's stories. It's all within you. There is a time when you went through hell and back. So you just got to look at your own resilience and then move that forward. That's all that is needed. I don't think, reading a book or watching a movie is going to make all that big difference because you're a hero unto yourself. We may not realize this. Every person on this call is a heroine. Every person is a hero. The only thing is, we got to tell ourselves, hey, you are one. Many times we may not believe it. First thing, your spouse is not going to believe it, right? So there are people around you who will always tell you you're not a hero. But you have to believe that you are one. I think that's the most important thing. Whatever that you create, you got to believe that this is the one that I believe in, I like it, I love it, I don't care about the world, this is where it is. I hope I have answered your question.
Oh, brilliant. In fact, as someone wise said, I'm not able to recall the name, he says that, even eagles need a push. And I think every time things go south, I'm going to remember this. Because when you did that little tap, I don't know, I was actually dreaming of something already.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
I think
Meg, I did
that's
it
the
on
mantra.
purpose. You see, what happens is when you're in your world, then you need to bring you back from that world. And that's why that clap, because we are all in our own worlds. And I'm sure that Srini, who's on the call, would have gone back to his world when everything was down, out, and he's looking at, and what the hell am I going to do? How am I going to pay my people? There are so many people dependent on me, and everybody's wondering what's going to happen. And they would have realized the reserve that is within them. Anyways, back to you.
Nathan, you know, I have a pen in my hand and I'm already taking notes. And maybe, you know, somebody's already joining me in asking this question. I think it is Anand who's asking along with me. When we heard so many stories even today in last or 52 minutes, how do we reflect and reproduce this? Is there a tip that you can give it to us? How do we reflect and reproduce?
Okay, so first of all, I don't know who asked that question, because I just think that's a fantastic question. I think this is such a beautiful question. I'll let you do a little bit of a secret. So who asked that question, Meg? Name of
This is, you know, because this is a long chain that's coming. I think it was
So
through.
I'll tell you, whoever asked this question, I'll tell you a secret. I collect stories. At the end of this session, I will tell you one last story. Okay, I'll tell you one last story. At the end of the session, when you say this is over, I'll tell you a story. But I want to tell you, I collect stories. I actually, I have a compendium of stories. And before I go out anywhere, I would sit down, I would research, I would do that. And by the way, those stories are nothing to do with me. There's always about something. The story that I shared with you, I made it personal, because I wanted this to be something, because it can all happen in our own lives. If I tell you the story of what happened to Steve Jobs, hey, that's something that you know. So if you want something real, then it's got to be about people who are on this call, people that you can work with, you can relate with. So that's what I want to do.
Super.
I collect stories.
Yes, I'm going to remind you for the last story also in about a few minutes from now.
Sure.
But tell us, you know, as some of us are going to be really get inspired to sort of, you know, start narrating stories to our kids, as you said, and to the people around us. What are the common mistakes that we normally land up doing while doing storytelling? If you want to alert us.
Sorry, I didn't catch the last word. One of the problems is?
I'm saying, what are the common mistakes we do while telling stories?
Is what? What is a common mistake?
What are the common mistakes we do when we start narrating stories?
Okay. So, one of the common mistakes. Okay. So, you need to really, first, is it the appropriate story? Is it something that you can connect? The whole thing is about how do you, you know, there is something that you care about. There is something that is developing in your own mind as a thought, but the one that would kind of bridge the two is the connect. Get the connect right. If you tell the wrong story to the right audience, or the right story to the wrong audience, then you have lost the plot. And of course, the wrong story to the wrong audience. So it's got to be, you have to be thoughtful about it. So it requires some practice. It requires a lot of care. So if you're interested in it, you will set it out, you will read those stories, and you will then go up and say, hey, this is what is appropriate. And many a time you will make a mistake. You will come back chastened because you thought it was a great story. It just simply flopped. There's always a punchline there that didn't work. the start didn't work, the middle fell through. It's okay, we'll all keep learning. But the key is, don't focus too much on the story as how you want to get the connect right. Because the connect is the one. You want to leave saying, okay, here is a thought that I want to leave behind. It's nothing to do with the story. You will forget these stories. You will never forget the boy who was listening to a story, who didn't know a word of English, getting distracted by a car, never even believing that they could sit in a car, speaking to you today. And as I'm saying all this, you can imagine the boy sitting out there on the platform of a rundown street in Madras. So that I know this, because this is something which is about something that happened to me.
That's so true. I always say is that when we hear stories from Nathan, उसमें मिट्टी की खुशबू होती है. So I think this is the Hindi line that I always borrowed, कि उसमें मिट्टी की खुशबू होती है. So that brings me to we have about 3 minutes from now. So Nathan, one final story from you that you would ask me to sort of alert you, please.
Okay, so this is a story. Some of you on the call may have heard this story. So if it is a repeat, pardon me. So this is the story of a Kabuliwala. So this Kabuliwala was getting off from Kabul, and he was coming to India to sell his wares. And he had his kaju, kishmish and all that. He meets his young, wonderful daughter and says, "Betty, what do you think I should get for you from India?" So the girl says, Papa, get me something. Papa, get me something, but it must be nice. Without even describing what it was, the child says, okay, thank you. And this guy comes to India. He completely forgets the fact that he's got to get his daughter something. He's sold off all his wares. And as he is heading back to Kabul, he's walking, he suddenly realizes oh my. And there is nothing in front of him as shops. And he knows that he has almost come to the border. He's tired. He's sitting under a tree. And he's sitting under a tree. And he suddenly looks up and he sees a lot of cackle of parrots. Takes a stone and throws it in the air. It hits one of the parrots. And the parrot falls to the ground. And obviously it's injured. He picks up the parrot and tries to tie his handkerchief that he has around, puts it in his bag, and takes the parrot home. Obviously, his daughter is going to be happy with this. As soon as he reaches home, his daughter is looking at the father in ask and saying, Papa, what have you got for me? And he takes out the parrot. He says, child, this is for you. And the girl is very happy. He gets a golden cage which is built for this bird, puts the parrot inside it, makes sure that it has the leg mended, and everything is fine. Again, after 6 months, it's now time for him to come back to India, by which time the parrot has now learned how to speak. So ask the parrot, they say, hey, parrot, I'm going to India, and perhaps on the way back, there is a chance that I could be somewhere near the tree where your brethren are. So is there any question, or is there any comment, anything that you would like to say that I can share with your brethren out there? And the parrot says, Malik, just tell them that they give me the best of Kaju Kishmish. I have a girl who really loves me. They really take care of me, but I'm very unhappy. I am very unhappy. So when he heard this, he was very unhappy. But anyways, he comes to India, goes, he buys some toys for his girl. And then as he's walking back, he remembers that he has to go to that same tree. Finds the tree and looks up and he says, hey, parrots, I've got something to say to you. What is it? Here is what your parrot says. First, very happy. My Malik is very, very kind. Everybody is good. His daughter loves me to death and gives me the best of Kaju Kishmish, but I'm very unhappy. I'm not happy at all. And as soon as he said this, there was absolute silence, and one of the parrots fell down from the branches to the ground dead. And the Kabliwala looks at that, does not know what to make of it, picks up his bag, goes to Kabul. And as soon as he enters his house, the bird is very excited. The daughter has been given all the gifts, that's fine, but the bird is fluttering and says, what is the message? What is the message? Says, hey, bird, I've got a message for you from your brothers and sisters. And says, here is a message. As soon as I said this, one of the birds fell down from the tree dead. So as soon as this bird heard this bird also fell down from its perch and died. Now it's the turn of the daughter who was weeping unconsolably. The Kabliwala was very sad. But anyway, things had to go on, so he asked for a golden coffin to be made. And the coffin came by very quickly. And slowly they opened the door of the cage and gingerly picked up the parrot. And as soon as the parrot was brought out, the parrot flew and perched itself out of an arm's reach and looked at the Malik and says, thank you. And now the bird is free. The Malik is amazed. The daughter is unhappy. And the Malik says, why did you thank me? He says, thank you for your message. Says, what is your message? And the parrot says, the message was very clear. Sometimes, in order to live, you have to die.
Wow.
Sometimes, in order to live, you have to die. So, to all my friends who are on the call, this is all that I have to share with you, that sometimes, if there is a little bit of change that we want to bring in ourselves, we have to lose a little bit of our side, number one. And two, sometimes we have to understand the nature of what happens around us and understand the meaning. There will be hundreds of stories. What you make of these stories, what you pick of these stories is entirely up to you. Meg, thank you so much for your time, and for everybody who's on the call, who made it to it, and all my friends on it as well. Thank you so much. Truly appreciate it. I've never had a much better time as I've had today. I just hope, thank you. I just hope that we have, I don't know whether we can take a picture of as many people as we can. So, good. Thank you all so very much.
We are going to do that, Nathan. I request all of you to turn on the videos as I, well, you know, no formal thank you to Nathan. Because,
no, please don't.
I just wish that, you know, for the state of mind for all of us, Dil Mange More. Somebody has already written to me, I wish it was a 3 to 6. It's like a movie time, you know, 3 to 6. Okay. But, you know, can't thank you enough, Nathan. It was such an amazing session. I wish that, you know, we had more time. As I said, you know, before even we start this session, there were many questions. We tried to filter out those, and I hope that, you know, most of the audiences got these answers. But once again, on behalf of Enable and the Strategist family, want to sincerely thank entire you know, audience for making it engaging. Because of your questions, we could make these sessions even more meaningful. I know there are a lot of questions which are unanswered. I'll find out a way how we can get these questions together and get some answers from Nathan, and maybe, you know, we'll pull out one page from Nathan's book to get these answers out. But once again, I request all of you to turn on the video so that we can get a nice memory. And Nathan, normally we have a you know, habit of announcing the next webinar that's coming on the Friday, the next Friday. The next webinar, Nathan, we are going to announce is a very, very Bollywood style, because name of the speaker is also very filmy. Like the Amitabh Bachchan in Agnipath, he says Vijay Dinana Chauhan. So we have a speaker who's a friend and who's a renowned psychologist. His name is Mr. Vijay Pandey, and he is bringing up a theme. He says, I'm going to share with the audience of Empower the Jaya and Virus of the success. The Jaya and Virus of the success, he says, is IQ and EQ. So looking forward, I'm sure for all Nathan's fans, including me, we're going to have Nathan's returns also. So Nathan, please, you have to give us a thumbs up that we're going to call you again with the questions which are unanswered. So we'll have a Nathan returns too. But once again, I formally thank everyone on the call for making it a wonderful evening for all of us. So thank you so much. See you next Friday at 3 o'clock. The timing has changed. It's not 4 o'clock now, because we know some of you are not all of you are at home or at work. So 3 p.m. next Friday. And the theme is the Jaya and Virus of the success. Let's have a good evening ahead and a happy weekend. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.